Yo, what is going on? It's Mike, aka Zookëper. For the tutorial today, what I want to talk about is more of a concept kind of thing, a little bit less of like a technique kind of thing in terms of any sort of like actual production or sound design. It's not really like that. This is more about how the supporting elements in your track can help hold up the main elements. Because in going through a lot of the feedback stuff, like there's so many like good ideas in the feedback tracks, and sometimes I feel like the execution on supporting them is not quite there. And I don't feel like there aren't enough tutorials on this kind of thing, so I wanted to go over this. We're calling it melodic math. It's not really math, but if anyone is like familiar with Max Martin, he's like a legendary pop producer, produced and wrote like some of like maybe like almost all of like the biggest songs of the last 20 years. And he has some really sort of, I wouldn't call them like cheat codes, but he has this toolbox that if you like analyze the tracks, he goes and sort of checks these boxes on all these things. And you can go on YouTube and learn all about what he does with that whole thing. But I think like there's a very basic concept of it that applies really well to dance music, and that's what we're going to go through today. And the basic concept of that is that we are, in making house or tech house or whatever we're doing, this is loop-based music, right? You got your bass line is a loop. You got maybe your vocal is a loop of a certain length. And in order to keep those loops from getting stagnant, you need to break them up. You need to break up the patterns in certain ways. And so that's kind of what I want to go over today. Everybody can write a cool bass line, but like, can you make it not be boring after 4 minutes? I think that's sort of the objective with these records. So what I want to do is actually dive right into 2 tracks by Dom Dolla, because I think he does the best job of this, and he does it in a way that's sort of more easily teachable or noticeable when we go through it. So I'm going to go through 2 records by him, Take It and Moving Blind. We'll go into that, and I'll sort of talk a little bit more about the theory as we go through. And a lot of this is going to seem like very, very simple, because in a sense it is. But again, I feel like people don't talk about this stuff enough. And a lot of times when there are problems in records, I notice that they are not adhering to these sort of objectives, or they're not really ticking these boxes. So there are a few, let's call it 3 main elements of this track besides the drums and everything, like melodically speaking. You have this big synth that plays right here. Right, you got that big soaring synth, and then you have big fat bass line. Come on over, cut some shapes, get it right up in my space and shake it. And then you have that vocal. Dance a little, move some more, push it back down to the floor and shake it. Just shake it. So those are really like the 3 lead elements of the track. Well, the bass isn't really a lead, but it's a house record, so it is very, very central to the idea. And immediately, what we can start kind of going through, like if we want to look at the lengths of the loops of these elements, because that's really the important thing in terms of what I'm talking about here. You have in the bass line, let's start with that. It's like most tech house records, it's 1 bar long and it loops. So we'll just listen to that real quick and pay attention. Just count to 4. It's 1. Come on over, cut some shapes, get it right up in my space and shake it. Just shake it. So we got that. And I've kind of made these boxes here just to show, like that's 1 bar, that's 1 bar, that's 1 bar. If we go back to the synth, and we'll go to a part where it's more like by itself. Cool, so that's 8 bars long. So I got a box here for that, 8 bars long. I think you can kind of get to see the idea of like where I'm going with this. It's like you have these main elements, all different lengths, and the idea is like the human brain can kind of only focus on one thing at once. So as soon as you get to like the end of that phrase and we're starting to already get used to the length of the bass, you need something to break up those lines of the 1 bar, 1 bar, 1 bar, 1 bar. And that could be a vocal that comes in that's 4 bars long.
Come on over, cut some shapes, get it right up in my space and shake it. Just shake it.
And essentially, you know, we always talk about like getting an 8-bar loop going before you really arrange your track. And yeah, to me, like, this is how you decide like what you're actually going to put in those 8 bars. Because once we get past these main elements, you get into, like, pay attention to this backing element here. You hear that vocal chop that's going da 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 da. That's another example of like another loop that's a really short loop, right? It's just eighth notes, so it's just another thing to break up sort of the monotony of that. And when we get further on in the track, like towards the second drop, by introducing those different loop lengths, you can basically just lay out the track and have things come in, things come out, and that's how you keep this track from getting boring after 4 minutes of essentially just hearing the same bass line the whole entire time. So that would be Take It.
I hope you guys enjoyed this preview of the tutorial. To access the full version along with many other tutorials and project files, head to www.kick-bass.com and you can join our amazing production community. Look forward to seeing you there.